Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2022? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church laws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2022. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. If you're concerned about the future of your organization when you step down, then where will the mantle fall? A biblical and legal guide to succession planning is a must-read for you. It delves into the scriptural and legal aspect of succession planning, characteristics of successors, the people, the process, church bylaws, common myths, even issues with nepotism. Where will the mantle fall? Written by Richmond's own attorney, Pastor Travell Travis, and available at Amazon.com.
Good evening and welcome to our latest episode, the special Juneteenth and Father's Day edition of Mantle Mondays. I'm your host, Travell Travis, and we're so glad that you took time out to join us tonight for this great conversation. So invite you to tag a father, a husband, a son, an entrepreneur, anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship, government contracting, anyone who's interested in learning more about renewable energy opportunities for minority contractors, what it's like to leave a job and begin an entrepreneurial journey that spans an entire career. We invite you to like, share, tag, and invite. We're streaming on multiple social media platforms on Facebook, as well as LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. We're also featured on Spotify and Apple as a podcast. So once again, we thank you tonight for joining us for the special Juneteenth and Father's Day episode of Mantle Mondays. And I'm your host, Travell Travis, for this conversation on tonight. Tonight, I am elated to have our guest on tonight. As I share with him behind stage, arguably one of the most influential individuals on my life, especially within my family. I would not be where I am professionally without his mentorship and without his coaching and without his life being a role model and example to me. And so I'm going to read his biography, then I'll share a little bit personally. My guest is a business development, diversity, and compliance consultant expert. He currently manages minority business enterprises, outreach, and business development services for U.S. Winds, Inc., Historic Maryland Renewable Energy Project. He has also supported diversity inclusion projects for the MGM National Harbor, Woodrow Wilson Bridge, Prince George's County, Maryland Supplier Development and Diversity Division, U.S. Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Division, Federal Bureau of Investigations, and the 2020 Black Farmers Cooperative. He is a volunteer at several community organizations, including being the current president of the Fayetteville State University DC Alumni Chapter, Prince George Family Justice Center, Progressive Life Center of Prince George's County, Maryland, and Visit Baltimore. He is also a member of the NAACP Baltimore and Prince George's County, Southern Maryland Minority Chamber of Commerce, Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council, Bi-County Business Roundtable, Prince George's County People for Change, 100 Black Men of Prince George's County, Maryland, and Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity. He holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and a master's in management from Golden State University in San Francisco, California. And hobbies include golf, cycling, and chess. He's married and the father of one son. But for me, as I said, he's the one of the most influential individuals in my life. From a childhood, he was the one that I looked up to. He is my mother's first cousin, and for me, that's like being an uncle. I recall as a child, he drove down from Maryland to Martinsville about 4.5, 5 hours. I don't even know if he remembers, to take my cousin and I to a Georgetown Hoyas game. It was my first exposure to college, dating back. I think Alonzo Mourning was in college playing then, but he drove all the way down, drove us all the way back, took us to the game, and then drove us all the way back, and then drove back and went to work. When I went to college, my mother couldn't afford a computer. He made sure I had my first computer when I was in college. When I graduated college and needed a place to stay, I got an internship at um, uh, um, the Capitol. I needed a place to stay. He provided me a place rent free, no charge, to ensure that I had a place to stay while I was transitioning to law school and to start my career there. When he would come home, he would allow me to pick his brain. Any question I had about college, PWIs, HBCUs, what's the difference between a major and a minor? What's the difference between a bachelor's degree, a master's degree? Had so many questions, had no idea, anything about college or how to select college. And so I am grateful that God placed in my life not just a cousin, but a mentor, a coach, a friend. And tonight I had to capture his story on this Mantle Monday series. And so, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, my cousin, Maynard Smith. Hello, sir.
Hello, hello. How are you?
Doing quite well.
That was good. Jeez.
But I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I had to make sure I captured not only the influential people, but your inspirational life and story. And I mean every word of it. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for you, not just being in my family, but being present in my life.
Okay.
And present in my life, being that coach, being that mentor, playing basketball outside, shooting hoops, taking questions, the road trips, letting me live there with you. And I'm grateful. And so I couldn't end this series without bringing on someone that has meant this much to me, but also has a compelling story that I think will benefit our guests. So first, happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And
it was a great Father's Day, by the way.
Huh?
It was a great Father's Day. I really enjoyed it.
That's good. That's good. Did you relax?
I decompressed. It was a long last week, but yesterday I just, we went out to brunch, and then after that we came back and we cooked on the grill. So it was just a totally relaxing day.
And so that spilled over to today, to Juneteenth?
Yes. So today it's been more relaxing and just watching things on television about Juneteenth. And so again, 2 good days of just decompressing and relaxing. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions about those 2 holidays.
Sure.
How should we celebrate Juneteenth? I'm just curious.
I can tell you, for me, I'd always heard about it, but I didn't know a lot about it. And then when it became a national holiday, and a lot of people that I was meeting was telling me that, 2 years after slavery was supposed to be over in Texas, they didn't know, but it was they finally found out about it. So I'm like, wow, amazing. But for me, it's more of it's like going to the Smithsonian, the African American Museum in Washington, and just looking at, when we came over on the ship, bounded and everything. And then you go through the museum and you get to the top and you'll see that our success stories. So to me, that's Juneteenth for me, just looking at where we've come and where we are today. And that's how I like to celebrate it.
Great. I'm going to ask you about Father's Day. I'm being transparent. I have mixed feelings about Father's Day.
Sure.
I'm grateful to be a father of 3, and it's an awesome honor and privilege to be the father of 3, especially 3 girls. And I'm grateful for, how they honor me, my wife, and they honor me. But I have mixed feelings because I look at the pictures of sons with their great dads or daughters with their great dads. And I feel like perhaps a part of my life is, I guess, missing or incomplete because I didn't have that experience.
Right.
I know you come from a similar scenario.
Mm-hmm.
What does Father's Day mean to you? And how do you deal with Father's Day?
So because I didn't have a father, my father died when I was 3 years old. I was blessed to be able to have uncles, because the neighborhood. So next door was my uncle. Below that was my uncle. I also had a brother who was 13 years older than me. So all those were sort of my surrogate fathers. And as my mother was a father and a mother, because when she wanted to discipline me, she would discipline me like a father. So I had all those things going on. But I can tell you, being a father is the most important thing in my life. Just to hear my son, at a young age say "dad," and then to realize that going through his life, things that I didn't get a chance to ask my father. Now I
Right.
could share that with them, and it's just a beautiful thing. So, being a dad is the most important thing in the world for me. Absolutely.
So was that kind of the approach? I'm going to give to my son all the things I wish I didn't have as a father.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your son, I like your daughter, but your son's going to come to you and ask you about all kind of questions.
Mhm.
About what was it like to be a young man? What's it like to shave? What's it
Mhm.
like to have all different kind of issues going on in your life? And so for me, it's like it's a beautiful thing to be able to know that you've gone through those things and you're able to share that information with him. So yes,
You know, we
dadhood is.
see, we see statistics about, the lack of fatherhood and the impact of not having fathers in one's life. And you shared about the uncles being there to
Oh
kind of
yeah.
surround you.
Mhm.
How did you overcome that environment? I know many succumb, but you overcame. You're married, you're successful, you're a father, businessman, and I imagine family, neighborhood, people who perhaps had the two-parent household
Mhm.
didn't make the same decisions or make the same positive moves in life. What would you say was the thing that helped you to overcome and not succumb?
I think I've been blessed in my life. I mean, obviously, when I was young, I had, for example, you talk about not having a father, but being where I was located, I had a grandfather, William McKinley Dillard, and he would tell me about life and just how it was. I mean, how to become a man. And then I also had William Albert Dillard, who would swing through and talk to me every Sunday about
Mhm.
what it's like to be a father, and not really a father, but just being a man. And even your grandfather, William Johnson, would talk to
Mhm.
me about just being, manhood and everything else. So those types of individuals sort of guided me as I went from being a young man to then going to college and then being around good mentors when I was in college and then being able to go on to where I am today. Yeah, there were a lot of kids on Carver Road, as we know, that strayed the wrong way. But I always well, for some reason or other, my relatives, everybody just sort of said, just hang in there. And if I did something wrong, as you know, before I got home, I got spanked by somebody down the road. It was just a whole family environment. So it wasn't like you could get away with anything because they knew it. And by the time I got home, my mother had that switch ready to wear me out. So I just knew what was going on. So you just had
So
to
that's
stay.
in the end, the community and the family really surrounded themselves
Takes a
around you and
village.
made.
You talk about takes a village. Everybody on that road knew what the kids were doing. So
Is there a
I
way
had to
to
stay.
reestablish that village? Sometimes I feel like we're now in our own little silos,
We
and
are.
we don't
We are.
have that since we're not living next to family. We're
Right.
almost afraid to discipline someone else's kid or get
Right.
involved with someone else's child. But is there a way to reestablish that community in a safe way?
I don't know. You've been to my home. You stayed here.
Mm.
The neighbors in my cul-de-sac. I know about four of them, and there's 72 families in this whole area, and I know about three or four families. So it's just different. I don't know how we could ever rekindle that again. Maybe through social media, being able to interact with people, but I think those days are gone. It's history now.
So then, what is the remedy for the young black man who doesn't have that support structure and the community is lacking? Are they hopeless?
I'm not saying they're hopeless. I think that there are a lot of different activities that you could do after school programs, mentorships by way of, like I said, I'm a member of 100 Black Men, and we mentor children in the DMV. Kids that are like 7, 8 year olds up to like high school students. The fraternity that I'm with, we have mentorship programs. So there are a lot of different organizations that you can work with young African American men on to get them ready for that future of graduating from high school and going on to build their careers. But like I say, taking a village, it takes a village. It's just hard. It's just hard.
But I think that's a point well taken, that even if it doesn't happen with the neighborhood as easily, the fact that you seek out these community
Mhm.
organizations to lend
Absolutely.
your time to kind of structure those mentoring opportunities. And too often, when we arrive, we kick the ladder away from underneath us and we don't reach back and to help others. And one of the things that I admire about you is that you've always been willing to reach back and help those who are willing to help themselves. Now, some you try to help, they're not meeting you halfway, and at a certain point, you have to say, okay. But then those who are really trying, listening and taking heed to your advice, you've always made yourself available to assist.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a little few knuckleheads out there, but the majority of times kids will listen and they will try to follow suit. But again, it's all about being a role model, in my opinion.
Right.
Kids emulate what they see. And so if they see what you're trying to do and they see your life, and you can talk about what you're going through and what you've been through, I mean, 9 out of 10, they're going to do the best they can do.
Now, going back to Carver, you're a high school athlete, you're a superstar, you're a celebrity. Yeah,
I was in the paper a lot. Yeah,
you get recruited by NC State.
Right.
You're playing on the big stage of the ACC. I think you told me you're at NC State. Lawrence Taylor's at UNC at the time.
UNC Chapel Hill, right? Exactly.
Right. So you're at the big stage of football. You suffer an injury, and then you transfer to Fayetteville State University. Can you tell us about that whole process of being recruited, playing sports, getting injured, transferring, the difference between the PWI and the HBCU, and then we'll pick up from there.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, being recruited by NC State, the recruiters came over and we were talking about playing football. And at the time, I said, "This is my pathway into the National Football League." And I went off spring ball, and then in the fall, and then I actually dislocated my shoulder, and I had to have surgery on my shoulder. And they said, "You can still play." Okay, with a pin in my shoulder. So I said, "No, I think my career is over." So when you're in a predominantly white school, PWI, they just treat you differently. I had advisors. I had people trying to help me in my classes and everything, but all that just got turned off. It's just like, nope, you're not playing anymore. You're on your own. And I had, before I came to NC State, the principal at my high school, his name was James Roundtree. I'll never forget this. He said, you should go to Fayetteville State, because he had attended Fayetteville State. And he had taken me down to the school, and I loved it. It was just a wonderful family environment. And so when I just knew my time was up at NC State, I called him and I said, "Is it possible I could transfer to Fayetteville State?" He said, "Can you get that tomorrow?" So he set everything up, and I just, transferred down to Fayetteville State. So that's what happened. Totally different environment, smaller classes. Professors were great. Got a chance to get to know a lot of people on a one-on-one basis, and a lot of my still, I consider my family. I graduated from Fayetteville State. So many alumni, so many fraternity brothers, so many good friends. So it was just, to me, I was blessed to be able to do that.
Man, you gave me so many more questions I want to ask. I want to throw this out here at you. My mother never let me play football, because all I heard all my life is
my injury.
Man had a pin in his shoulder.
In my shoulder, knee injuries, all kind of stuff.
Like, oh my God, a pin in his shoulder. So basketball was okay, other sports, but
right.
Football, no.
Yeah, my son has never played football, so nope, that's okay.
So at Fayetteville State, and you talked about the smaller classrooms and
sure.
the cohesiveness of the teachers, and the teachers willing to invest. What is the relevance of HBCUs today? Some say we don't need them anymore. I'm thinking about Juneteenth. Perhaps if there's ever a day, maybe we should reflect and support our HBCUs. And I appreciate you never pushed me really either way, PWI or HBCU. I think you kind of gave me the pros and cons of both. But what would you say to somebody who's considering an HBCU in 2023? Should they go?
I would say the answer is yes. And of course, I'm biased because I'm president of the Fayetteville State University DC Alumni Chapter. But I would say absolutely yes. I mean, it has a lot of advantages to it, meaning that the classes are smaller and the teachers take an interest in making sure that you succeed. And that's the one thing I loved about my university and other HBCUs as well. They really take pride in making sure that you get your assignments done, and that you really understand the material. And when I wanted to consider, because I one time, even my career, I was thinking about going to the Air Force and coming out as a second lieutenant. And one of my professors said, well, you can go over to the career shop or office, and they have internships. And I went there, and that's what led me to coming to Washington, D.C. So again, it was all about being able to work with the teachers and professors and just everybody at that university. It's just one big family, and it still is today. The relevance of it, why they should go today. A lot of African American students that are attending Fayetteville State and other universities are still first-time college students.
Mhm.
And a lot of them come from rural environments, urban environments where they just never got it. And so when they go there, they have remedial programs to get them up to speed so that they can actually be a real freshman. And they sort of guide them along that way with summer school and everything else. Like our school has year-round educational requirements. You got to go to summer school and make sure you're currently enrolled at your right level, you're sophomore or junior. So it's important. So to me, again, it's vitally important that HBCUs and students attend HBCUs that need to go to that type of environment. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I do think that it's important for a lot of students.
But now you're hearing with the student loan debt, crisis and the amount of debt the students have, and maybe we're pushing people to go to college that should maybe focus on trade.
I agree with that too.
What's your view on that?
Well, I think that the importance of community colleges is important. Again, in the industry I'm in now, and we'll talk about that later on, but being able, when I was in school, we had advanced or AP classes, and we had vocational classes. A lot of those classes at the high school level there are just, in terms of vocational schools, are gone.
Right.
Now, either you're in the AP classes, you're going to get a job or go in the military, but those classes are really, really important. And that's why community college is so important. You don't have to go to a 4-year school in order to come out and get a great job. I mean, my son's in cybersecurity and he's doing well. He went to 2 years.
Wow.
And so, it doesn't really matter about the 4 years anymore nowadays. It's just a matter of what you want to do to build your career. And 2 years, 4 years, less debt. Or if you go to a community college and transfer to a 4-year school, you still have less debt.
Right.
So you just got to make some decisions.
So as a football fan, as an HBCU fan,
Mhm.
were you disappointed with Deion Sanders?
Not really. I thought he put in the best he could at Jackson State. He turned that school around. He turned, having HBCUs on television, which I've never seen before at a major level. And you can't blame him for moving away and, making that type of money. But I was proud of what he did while he was there. I mean, even though I'm not a Deion fan, but, I was proud of what he did at Jackson State. So
should more retired NFL players at least perhaps make that tour of duty, serve that time there to try to uplift, even if they don't stay? Maybe.
I think that'd be good. I mean, obviously, hopefully they made enough money in their lifetime to go and, be able to coach at the HBCU. I think that would be great. There's a lot of them that are doing, making that transition now. Hopefully more in the future.
So you graduate from Fayetteville State. You're from Martinsville, Virginia. You go to Fayetteville State, Fayetteville, North Carolina. How did you end up in Maryland?
So I was a junior in college, and again, I was considering going into the Air Force. And one of my professors said that, and I told him I wanted to be an Air Force guy. He said, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, think about the military." He said, "Well, you don't have to be in the military to get a military job." And I didn't know exactly what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. He said, "You can be a civilian, work for the military, and you can get into an internship or co-op, and you can just, be a civilian worker." So that's what ended up happening. I interviewed at Fayetteville State for a job, and they had 2 openings. One was in Philadelphia, and the second one was in Arlington, Virginia. And I accepted the one in Arlington, Virginia, Crystal City. We're not, beautiful area. And I came up and I internship with the Naval Air Systems Command, and for a semester, went back to school, then came back again for a second internship. And then after that, I just went to work for the organization. And that's how I came to the DMV.
So that was your first job out of school, was with the Naval
Air Systems Command. Yes.
So that's good government job. You got a good government job. Good government job.
It was going to go for like
5 to 7. You said what?
It was going to take me it was going to take me from like a 5 to GS5 to 7 to 9 to 12 So yeah, it was a good government job.
So good government job, clear path, benefits, retirement, and all of a sudden you get the idea of, I think I want to leave this and go on my own. What were you thinking?
Well, it was another level to that because
Okay.
when I was a GS7, most of the government has consulting groups,
Okay.
and so there was a company called Virtual Laboratories, and at the time I was a GS7. I was probably making 30-some thousand dollars a year,
Okay.
and which is nothing. Okay, and then this consulting group said, "Hey, we love you. We love what you're doing," and they like people looking like me. So they said, "We'll pay you 60,000 to come to work for us." I said,
Wow.
"Oh my God, I could stay here and work for the government. I could go over to a contractor, defense contractor, and make double my salary." So that's what I ended up doing. And so I left the government and went to work for a company, and I worked for those guys up until like 1988 timeframe.
Okay.
And then from there, the company said, "Hey," and I told them that I love what I'm doing. I'm still working for DoD, but I'd be interested in setting up my own business. And so from there, they helped me with finance and everything to set up my own business. So that's what happened.
So your ability to finance, I mean, it wasn't from the family, it was the company that you worked for was
Mhm,
willing to finance you to start your
mhm.
own company?
Yeah, so this company was Virtual Laboratories. I'll never forget, I was telling them that I was be interested in setting up my own business. And I knew the president. They loved what I was doing because I was bringing them in business. And I'll never forget, because I had the ability to walk through my own invoice to pay for my annual salary. And at the time, I was making about 65,000 at the time. And I looked at that invoice and it said 240,000, and I was getting paid 65,000. And I was saying, wait a minute, how are they making 240 and I'm making 65? So talk to the guy, say, yeah, that's overhead, G&A, that's insurance. Yeah, okay, but 240 and 65. So I said I'd be interested in setting my own business, because 8A with that time, small business was really,
Right.
really popular. So they said, well, if you did that, how much you think you would need to get started? I said around 30,000. He said, okay, well, we'll think about it. And probably a couple of months later, I was called into one of the VP's office. He said, we're looking to mentor 8A companies. Would you still be interested? I said, yeah. And I saw the check on the desk. He said, boom, $30,000 to get my business started. And that's
Wow.
what happened. So again, that was back early 1988, and that's how I got my business started.
So was that a
So
loan or a gift or
it was a loan. I had to pay it back over time. It was like a 5-year loan, and I ended up paying it back in like 2 years. So it was great.
wow. And I've shared with my students that not those specific numbers, but I said no matter how much someone pays you, it's not all that they're making off of you. And I wouldn't imagine that you get 60 out of 240. And for you to
Yeah,
see that invoice, that's definitely inspiration to say, you know
I'm
what,
doing
I
all the
think I
work.
want to be my own boss.
I'm doing all the work. I'm putting in my
Mhm.
own invoice, but the company is making triple. It's ridiculous.
So you get the check. I mean, it's one thing to kind of visualize or, hey, I think I like to be my own boss for my own business. Now you got the check and it's like, all right, see you. What do you do next?
No, I mean, when I got the check, what we started talking about was some of the contracts we'd like to go after. Again, they were still going to mentor me, and
Okay,
so
okay.
there was an opportunity for me to actually look at work for the Navy, still with the Navy, and it took me about 8 months, and I ended up getting my first contract. It was like $20 million in support of what's called the Naval Air Systems Command. I'm sorry, Naval Air Warfare Center, and the rest was history. That I never really looked back.
So in some ways, they needed you to get
Mhm.
some of the things that they wanted, and you
That's
needed
correct.
them to get some of the things that you wanted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's how the business works. I mean, you got to be able to have something that they want, and then you need something from them. So it's all about partnerships and being able to work with organizations.
So did you stay exclusively with them, or when did you eventually branch out, I guess, from underneath them?
After I paid them back, we sort of we still work together on some projects, but I started working more towards the larger general contractors like the General Dynamics and those Lockheed Martin guys. So I started working more towards being subcontractors with those guys. So, but again, we always maintain a positive relationship.
How do you even get noticed by those big guys? I mean, is it because they've seen your work for the first company? Like, you don't just show up to Lockheed Martin and say, "Hey, I'm a minority contractor. Hey, you got any bids for me?" Or, "Hey, you want to hire me?" Like, how do you even make that connection?
It's all about networking. Again, the key was that there are certain organizations you need to join in order to meet those Lockheed Martin guys, or General Dynamics, or khaki CACIs. There are networking sessions you go to, and you just got to just sort of hone your skills in terms of networking and develop those relationships. But you always got to bring something to them. They're not going to reach out to you. You got to be able to bring what you think you could go after, but you need that large firm to support you. And that was always the case with me.
Were you ever in a room where you're like, "I don't know if I fit in here or I belong here"? I mean, considering that,
No.
okay.
No, 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 no. I don't care if you went to Harvard or Yale. I don't care. No.
So
No.
is that the HBCU giving you that confidence, or was that the
Absolutely.
Dillard
No.
family giving you that confidence?
It's all from my grandfather to my uncle to your grandfather. They should be happy that I'm in the room, okay? Because it's absolutely.
Wow, but that's good. That's good. So there has to be a level of confidence, self-confidence,
Mhm.
but there also has to be that willingness to say, "Okay, this is what I can offer you. This is what you can offer," knowing your value, and being able to present that to people. Because with government contracting, I mean, you're only as good as what the next contract. As soon as this one's over,
Mhm.
you're constantly having to fish for
That's
for
correct.
the next.
That's correct.
Wow.
I mean, and that's why my career span has been where I dealt with a lot of general contractors, but then we got into the after 2000, I started looking more towards state and local work because it was just so much easier to go after that type of work than the federal work. The federal work is it's so competitive, but then I just started transitioning on to state and local work.
How do you? One of the things I find that a lot of entrepreneurs lack, it's really two things, but one is trust.
Mhm.
Meaning, I'm in my business, I want to be my own boss, but I really don't trust anybody. And because they don't trust anybody, they're unwilling to collaborate with others.
Mhm.
Your industry is about collaboration. I mean,
Mhm.
whether you're
Mhm.
the primary contractor, subcontractor, whether you're independent, how do you how did you get to a point where you were willing to trust other people in these deals? Or did you have some experiences where some people played you, screwed you over,
Mhm.
cheated you out of
Mhm.
deals? I mean, just being
Yeah. I
honest. I
mean,
mean,
yeah. I mean, it's hard to build trust. When you initially when you're trying to work with people that you may not know, you just write it out and see how it's going to work. Then I've had people who I've known for years, and go behind my back and just try to take the work. But it's just a matter of just keep moving forward and saying that no matter what happens, you got to trust that you're on the right path. And like I said, I always said God has a place for everybody, and there is a path that He's taking me on, and if it is to be, it's going to happen. So,
how long did it take? I remember, I mean, I was younger, but I remember you being working for yourself, you're doing
mhm.
well.
Right.
But I remember there was a certain point where I think you even said, "Hey, if I get this one, it's almost like a game changer." Do you remember that? Because then that's the house changed, the car changed. Do you
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
that
Yeah. That
game
was
changer contract?
yeah, it was a couple. One was the and you read on the bio, I got a contract with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and that contract was a game changer for me because it switched my paradigm. I was more involved with IT work, and IT became really, really competitive. And so I started switching over to, let's see, how do I get involved with, and just to mind you, as I was winding down the IT business, I was with General Dynamics, and they were also taking a lot of my hot top level guys. So I wanted to transition out of that. And to me, taking on a contract with the Bureau and having to recruit for special agents, at HBCUs, and just whole HR process of looking how that happened. And to me, that was a game changer for me because it just switched everything for me into looking how we can look at diversity and inclusion and all those things back in the early 2000s. And that was a great contract. It changed everything. The money, everything was fantastic. So yeah, that was a game changer.
In contracting, how do you stay in the present and look at the future? Because you have to execute the contract you have now,
Mhm.
but you always got to be looking ahead and planning and bidding for the next. How are you able to work in the present and in the future at the same time?
So, even currently now, my current project, I'm looking at about 5 years down the road at where can I position myself such that I can, by let's say 2028, 2029, what part of the country I'd like to live and just how I can continue what I'm doing. And so I'm looking now towards North Carolina in terms of Myrtle Beach and that whole area where we're building similar projects I'm working on now, which is offshore wind off the coast of
Mhm.
North Carolina. So you have to live in the present because you got to make sure those checks are still coming in, which are great.
Right.
But you got to live in
Right.
the present, and then you also have to look down the road 5 years out and just say that's the position I want to be in by 2020, 2029. So you live in the present, but you're thinking about planning and you're networking for those opportunities to develop as you move towards the second half of the decade.
So that visionary strategic planning, is that built in your daily schedule, or is that a
Always,
annual
always.
retreat?
For me, it's a weekly process. I try to plan, everything on a year by year basis, but I try to project out 5 years. So I'm honing my plan almost every week, every other week. So, because, even like I said, for 2027, 2028, I'm on the phone talking to folks down in North Carolina about what we're doing here and how we could look at things by that time frame. Because my
Wow.
project that I'm working on now will be built in North Carolina by 2035. So that's a long time. So that's actually 12 years out. So that's sort of the paradigm right now.
When you started your business, your CAM systems, CAM
Mhm.
is an acronym, including your initial, but there were two others, if I recall.
Yeah, there was Cecilia Green, and she's a minister now. She actually retired, and now she's a pastor in Chicago. And the other one was Alma Johnson, and she passed away about 7 years ago. But that was
How
the
did you
C,
select your
Cecilia,
partners?
huh?
How did you select your partners?
By that time I had sold the business, but it
Okay.
really wasn't. They were all coming out of the same defense contractor. We were all looking at how we could take that 30,000 and just sort of move forward with it. But Cecilia Green was the engineer, Alma Johnson was more the HR person, and I was the outreach and the business development guy. So that's how we did it, and they were
Because a
great.
lot of people need partners, and we see the benefit of partnership. You bring different things to the table, you offset your weaknesses and
Right,
maximize your strengths. But kind of
right.
going back to that whole, this is mine, I want to do it my way, I don't trust anybody. You see a lot of minority businesses in particular suffer because
I know.
they're unwilling to bring in those other minds to the table. What would you say to somebody who perhaps needs a partner but is unwilling to bring on somebody at a partnership level? Maybe as an employee level, but definitely not trying to bring them in as a partner.
I mean, it's tough. I think our community, and more so the Hispanic community, we have a really tough time trying to open up your books or just share information. It's just tough. But what I would tell them is that you may succeed in the short run, but in the long run, you're not going to be able to sustain your business. And so you have to be able to open up and just trust someone to be able to work with you because you can't do everything. I mean, again, in my current role now, trying to recruit for minority-owned firms or women-owned firms, I run into a lot of firms that one guy is doing everything. He's like the business development guy. He's writing the checks. You can't do everything. You can't do that. I mean, you got to be able to, have some good people surrounding you.
So what's the key to finding good employees then? I know you have employees and you also have subcontractors, you have
Mhm.
independent, I mean, you have different people working different ways,
Mhm.
but you have this ecosystem of people who assist you in what you're doing. What is the
Yeah, yeah.
rule
I
of
mean,
thumb?
well,
I mean,
I
what's
mean,
the rule of thumb for that?
yeah. I mean, in Maryland, be honestly, again, Maryland is blessed. I still love my great state of Virginia, but in Maryland, we're blessed because we have what's called Maryland Employee, and with them looking for engineers, if I'm looking for people that can do virtually everything, administrative work. I just have to reach out to my friend who runs the Employ Maryland office. And I said, this is a job description. I need about 5 candidates. Can you send them over? And I get them the next day. I mean, that's the network that I have here in Maryland. So it's not hard recruiting people here. It's just making sure that they're good quality people. And I got folks in a position there where when I need somebody, they can give me good candidates.
That's great. That's great. Now, there with these programs that are often offered by the federal government, state government, local government, especially geared towards minority businesses, small businesses, female businesses.
Right.
Sometimes there's a lack of awareness, I guess, that minority businesses aren't aware of these programs, but then there's also issues of eligibility. You see the problem being there's not enough programs, there's not enough awareness of the programs, or you don't find enough minority businesses eligible to benefit from these programs.
I mean, I don't think it's a lack of programs. And I go back to your grandfather, because when I was, in high school, I remember him telling me about the SBA program and the 8A program. And I had no idea what he was talking about. He was saying, there are programs set up where small minority businesses can actually get a contract, sole source or limited competitive. And so those programs have been around since the 70s. And so other programs like HubZone or all these type of programs are still available. So I don't think it's a lack of programming or programs. I think that there's a lot of it. People just they don't trust the federal government. So therefore they don't want to, go after the type of work, or they're just intimidated. So now there's plenty of programs out there. There are plenty of ways that you can actually apply and actually go after work. It's just some people are just stubborn. So that's how I look at it.
I had an experience some years ago. I think that was coming out of the Great Recession, and they were basically giving free money to minority businesses. And I remember an entrepreneur to this the city attorney, and he was like, "We just can't find enough businesses that meet our criteria." And so essentially, after a while, they said, "Well, we don't have enough. We're gonna give the money somewhere else." They were either, they're not incorporated, they didn't have their EIN, they didn't have their tax returns, they didn't have their, membership agreement for their. It was just, and so that's what made me think about the ineligible, that there's this low interest or essentially free money available to build or expand a business, but because people didn't have their ducks lined up, paperwork in place, they missed out on opportunities. And so I wonder, you hear a lot of people wanting to get into government contracting, because in your area, everybody wants to be a government contractor, whether they're custodial services, security services, or all the way, to some of the more high level things. But then when you look at how they manage their business, it's so, I guess, sloppy, or
it's just non-existent sometimes. Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you saw that with the PPP loan. People just made up businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you coach somebody into, okay, this is not a side hustle. This is not just a hobby. This is a profession. And what you do perhaps negatively impacts the rest of us because your paperwork is not in place.
I agree. I mean, the only thing you can do is just, hopefully walk them through the process of getting their certifications, whether at the federal level, was the 8A or HubZone program, et cetera, or even at the level, state level. In Virginia, they have the SWAM program, the Small Women and Minority-Owned Business Program. On the Maryland side, we have what's called the Maryland MBE program. So everything you can do is just guide them to making sure that they fill out all the paperwork. And probably if you take 10 businesses, if you can get 3 or 4 that's going to do that, you just got to move on with that. I mean, in my lifetime, I've seen where there's, when you start off and you give somebody an opportunity like this, and those 3 get opportunities, that was 7 to come back and they'll say, "I didn't know. Why didn't I have an opportunity?" Well, on this day, we told you that you got to apply, you got to get all your information. And I got a document here to say, this is what I told you to do.
Right.
And you missed it. So there may be another boat coming out soon, but you got to get your act together. So.
Wow. So sometimes it is our fault.
Well, sometimes it's that small business owner that just doesn't want to do the work to actually
Okay.
get the paperwork in. And
Okay.
that takes someone like you, someone that could support those guys to say, look, it may cost you a little bit of money to set your business up the right way, but this is what you're going to need to move forward. And it's just the way it is.
Now, I had a conversation with an entrepreneur week before last. We were talking about pricing for
Sure.
services. Now, in your business, you're pricing for contracts. How do you avoid underbidding?
Mhm.
Because I imagine sometimes some of these minority businesses take the approach, let me bid so low that I get the contract, but
Right.
then I really can't afford to do the job properly, and then it
Right.
backfires.
Yeah, I remember those days at the federal level. So for me, I would go to Freedom of Information, and I'd actually download some small business that was similar to me, and I would look at their pricing structure. And you can get that information out there. It's free. So they would
Wow.
tell you about what their personnel was, a program manager or systems analyst, systems administrator, and you would see what their rates are. And then you'd say, well, okay, how can I be competitive to see if I can come underneath that number? So that information, you got to do a little bit of homework, but that's at the federal level. And the same at the state as well. You can still, query and get that information from vendors. So that's how you can be more of in a competitive basis with other firms. And you just got to just sharpen your pencil and see if you can get down to a lower number.
But in the end, is it the bid or is it the networking?
It's both. I mean, the bid is important, but for me, it's all about networking. I mean, prime example, I took my wife out to Ocean City this past week, and we were at a golf tournament. We love to play golf, and my wife loves to play golf.
Mhm.
And we get there, and it's a bunch of small business owners, larger business owners, and we're the only people look like us in the room. Not even people cleaning up, not even people cooking the food. So, and I walk out of that room with almost 50 business cards. Everybody wants to get to
Wow.
know that person. So yeah, you got to get at that network, and it's also about bidding, but it's mostly people have to like you and get to know you, and that's about 80% of the game right there. I'm telling you, it's all about networking.
Wow. So how do you don't just show up and knock on the door to get in that room? I assume somebody invited you, or is that a level of
A
persistence?
couple of times, like the people hear about your success, like the project I'm on now. I didn't ask for this work. I was just coming off of building the project at National Harbor, and we're very successful in what we did. And I made a name for myself in the state of Maryland regarding hitting diversity target numbers.
Okay.
And so the company that said that you were the number one guy in the state that hit diversity targets, and so we'd like to have you as a consultant. And I said, yeah. He said, well, how much would it cost? I said, well, I put a number down on paper. He said, hey, I could definitely do that. So that was it.
So some of your contracts was to help find other minority
Yeah,
businesses to do
like the
work
one I'm
with.
on now. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like the bureau start there, and then if you're in Maryland, the DMV or Virginia, you're crossing the Woodrow Wilson Bridge project, and that's when I reverted from federal down to state because we had diversity targets for that project of about 15%. I ended up getting about 22% diversity awards on that project, which is great. And then I roll over to the MGM resort in Maryland, and that project had about a 25% cap in terms of diversity targets. I finished up with 35% MBE, so we made a lot of money on that $1.5 billion project. Another project I'm on now was a $5 billion project building these offshore wind platforms, and the target now is 15%, but I think I could probably get to about 25% from pre-construction to construction operations. So it's all about making sure that I try to find good companies that can do some work.
Wow. Wow. So you really are on the ground level in terms of
I'm in the room. I'm in the room.
finding these companies and making
Yeah.
sure that they're in position to take
Mhm.
advantage. Because
Oh,
basically
yeah.
you're the doorkeeper for many of them.
I am.
And so and so it can't be like, come on, bro, hook up a bro. Like, no, like my
I've seen it all.
reputation is on the line because if you don't do what you're supposed to do, then I'm gonna be in trouble.
I've seen it all. I've seen people say begging, send me stuff. I mean, all kind of stuff. No, what can you do? are you able to perform on the project? So I've seen it all. I mean, I can tell you, not on this phone call, but I've seen it all. But the bottom line is that, yeah, I got to be in a position where, because we have to operate on a budget, and I have to make
Right.
sure the vendor comes in and produces, because it has to be done in a certain time constraint.
So I imagine you make a lot of friends and a lot of enemies.
Oh, I do. I got a lot of people that hate my guts, but then I got a lot of people that respect me because I make sure that the contract is done successfully. And, it's important for our state, particularly Maryland, to make
Mhm.
sure that diversity, and our governor is really stressing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And
Right.
he's watching the projects I've been working on. So it's important.
So why is your governor different than the governor in Texas? Because he just sign a bill to eliminate the very thing you just said your governor is trying to.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer that.
Nah, that's a good point. I mean, I think the governor in Texas and the governor in Florida, they're thinking short term. Obviously, our state is a little different. Because Maryland is different because we're sort of that state not everybody's watching because we are a majority minority run state
Okay.
in terms of population as well. So we are a majority minority state. Texas will eventually get there. Florida will eventually get there. And so they're trying to hang on and put policies in place to make sure that that certain sector still gets opportunities. But that's short-term thinking because eventually both those states will also be majority minority owned states. So by 2030, 2035, it's over. So
Wow.
they gotta, they'll be on the wrong side of history as we move into the end of this century, into the end of this decade, into 2030.
Now, one of the things maybe you shared in private and can't say, but I know, especially starting with defense contracting, from a business standpoint, you like certain individuals with certain affiliations that may be different than perhaps your personal political viewpoints. You've been able to support, I guess, both parties, candidates from both parties.
Sure.
How important should an entrepreneur be apolitical, nonpartisan, or bipartisan? How do
I
you
mean,
navigate?
I think there should be both apolitical and, just don't be affiliated saying that I'm with any party. To me, people never know who I voted for because I can be associated with Republicans. I can be associated with Democrats. I can be associated with independents. So for me, it's apolitical and just nonpartisan. Just now, don't
But
let
doesn't
anybody
that
know.
hurt because then you're not smoothing up with
I give money to both sides, and whoever
Okay.
wins, you're my best friend. So
that's dealing with today and dealing with the future.
yes,
You said it,
absolutely.
but I know that's kind of the conversation you had that, hey, you got to work because otherwise for 4 or 8 years,
Mhm.
you're sitting outside
That's right.
because
That's right.
you basically,
Supported
unwilling to
one
work with
party,
who's in
right?
charge.
That's
And
right.
the government contractor, whether it's at the federal level or the state level, you can't afford to miss out on 4 to 8 years of business.
Yeah. No, exactly. So whenever they come calling, I support both sides, except for that guy, the crazy guy in Florida. But and support whatever party. You can't. You got to support everybody. And like I said, whoever wins, whoever wins. So that's how I look at it.
And is that distinguishing business from personal, or can you
Yeah,
business
I
wise? Can that
in my
advance?
role, I can't really support them personally. I can only support them on a business standpoint. So my business supports both sides of it. So because whenever historically when I've supported someone personally, it comes up somehow they find it on the internet that I
Mhm.
supported this guy, and so I can't have it. No.
That's good information. That's good
Yeah,
information to have.
stay away from that. Stay away from that.
So all these years you had your own business. At some point, you sell that business and then start a new business. Can you talk about that transition of selling what you've had, I guess, at that point, with 20, 30
Yeah,
years, and
yeah,
then starting
absolutely.
over with something new in a totally different area? Can you talk about
Right.
that transition?
Yeah, for me, it was more of you sort of know when you know that it's time that it's time for you to move on to something different. So for me, I looked at my accounting and looked at my where I was financially, and there was a couple of companies that asked me about buying my business, and so overall they offered me a good dollar amount for my company, and I just moved on. I never looked back. When I set up my new company, it was more in line of let's just get away from the federal marketplace and let's look at local and state. And so still got this one moving forward. So that's where I'm at.
So when they bought the other one, there wasn't a idea like, all right, I'm done. I mean,
No,
oh,
no. I mean, for me, I don't think I'll ever retire. I mean, it's not like I'm working. It's like I enjoy what I'm doing.
okay,
So
okay.
yeah. So to me, it was just a matter of just moving in a different direction. So that's it.
And that direction now is renewable energy, wind,
Correct.
solar. Tell us more
It's,
about that and opportunities for minorities to get into that new arena.
Yeah, so right now it's not. I'm focusing on offshore wind. So the
Okay.
company that I'm a subcontractor to is a U.S. Wind. My company is MMS LLC, but the company I'm supporting is U.S. Wind, based out of Baltimore. It's about a $5 billion company supported by huge financial guys coming out of Europe and in New York. And the objective of the program is by 2027, 2028 to have at a minimum about 76 wind turbines in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Ocean City, Maryland. And those wind turbines will be able to power close to 500,000 homes by the second half of this decade. For that process, also, we're building out a fabrication facility, which is and Beverly, I don't know if you remember, like the suburbs of Baltimore, Baltimore County. At one time, Bethlehem Steel Yard used to be one of the leading steel manufacturers in America. And of course, that no longer exists. So we actually purchased 90 acres on that facility, or U.S. Wind did. And so we're now going to build out our whole fabrication shop there, and all the components that are coming over from Europe by late 2025 will be coming there, and we'll assemble the wind turbines there, then take them out by barge out to Ocean City, stand them up, and they'll be ready to go by, like I said, 27, 28 timeframe. So it's still a moving circle in terms of that date, but that's the process. So right now I'm sourcing vendors to do the basic construction needs on the project, and then from there, those turbines will come over. We'll have that facility retrofitted or new buildings going up so that we're ready for those components to come over.
Now I know you're a businessman, but
Sure.
I'm sitting here. How are you able to have such high level expertise about so many different industries?
This is a new industry for me. I mean, obviously, I've been through the IT craze. I've been through HR trying to recruit and look at stuff like that, like for the Bureau and other agencies. And then I looked at, the MGM and National Harbor, and I've seen that. And so for me, it's like, okay, now how do I transition something different? And I think that renewable energy over the next, 2 decades is where I want to probably end up retiring with. I just think that that's the perfect venue to look at, perfect business model to look at for the next 20 years. As we start to look at building out this project, when those turbines are up, they'll be up for hopefully, we're saying 2027. By 2047, we'll look at how we're going to decommission those wind turbines. But by that time, I hope to be not in Florida, maybe in the Carolinas or Arizona somewhere, just enjoying myself. But yeah, I mean,
But your willingness to evolve and even learn new industries, that takes a special person. So I can imagine some of your contemporaries got locked in to one industry and stayed there. And some maybe excel because they really became a dominant player, but then some may have met their early demise because they weren't willing to pivot to other industries.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. You got to be able to pivot. You got to look at industries that are coming down the pipeline, like AI. All that stuff is coming down the pipeline, but you have to make a decision in which direction you want to go. But whether it's artificial intelligence or renewable energy or just as a whole, what the other industries that you got to look at 5 years from now, 10 years from now. The amazing thing that I've been able to do in my career is that when I'm in rooms talking to folks, whether it's in the energy business, is that, and again, a lot of people like me, but they're talking 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road. And so we need to start thinking about that process of being able to transition and get ready for those industries coming into the marketplace.
And so that's not going back to school, getting another master's degree. That's from networking.
That's just networking. That's just networking. It's all about networking.
Like I said,
Yeah, just and then most times people will just call me and say, hey, what do you think about this? And I'll say, that's an interesting business. Let's talk about it. Let's go to some of the meetings. And I'm always being called in to say, what do you think about this? And that's what happens. I guess, like I said, I've been blessed. My life has been blessed. Yeah.
Wow. Which one of those projects were you think in the end you're most proud of? You had the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. I remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
National Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
MGM. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have the wind turbines. Which one in the end do you think you want to be like, you know what? I helped make that one.
I can tell you that I really love the Woodrow Wilson Bridge because when I cross that bridge every day, I'm just like, I got they gave me a little coin to say, you made a major contribution on that bridge. And I think that that's probably the project that I'll always look back on and say, I made my name there. It was just, it took a long time to build that bridge. There was a lot of
Right.
environmental concerns, but I made my name there. And I'll always say, I love that project. It was great.
Because you originally had to commute before it got changed when you lived in
Absolutely.
Maryland, commuted. So
That's
that
right.
was a personal
It was. It was. It was. It was a close story.
that was a painful
Exactly.
commute.
It was hard. It was hard. Yeah, yeah. But when it got completed, I'm telling you, and we could drive over that bridge, and that day that we were actually doing the ribbon cutting, and I saw the governor from Virginia and the mayor from Washington and the governor from Maryland. We were all sitting there, and I'm saying, yes, I was a part of this. So that was a beautiful day.
With you saying that, sitting there with the mayor of DC, governor of Maryland, governor of Virginia, what aspect of your life today? We're winding up this interview. If anybody has a question, feel free to post it in the comments of the chat. What aspect of your life, if you were to go back to that 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old boy on Carver, would be the biggest surprise to you now?
Probably
Or did you
that.
envision it all?
Well, I sort of envisioned doing some things, but I just never knew exactly what it was going to be. So I think it goes back to also just what we talked about earlier. The important thing is that no matter what you do in your career, it comes down to family. And marrying and being a husband for 32 years, and having a son who's 30 years old now. To me, it's just that's I just never envisioned that was going to happen to me. I thought I was going to be like single and having but I just never thought
So it's
that.
the
But
family side, really.
it's the family side. No matter what you do, when you come home in the evenings, no matter what you're doing, that family just completes you. So for me, that is something I just never imagined that I'd be in a situation. But I'm just so happy and blessed that it's happened.
I'm glad you said it because I was going to go in a different direction. I was on a panel last week with some other successful Black men, and one of the things that they wrestled with, we all wrestled with, was the balance between being a provider and being present.
Mm-hmm.
How did you strike that balance? Because there is the grind of I have to work,
Mm-hmm.
but then I got to be there for my family.
I mean, it was tough.
it?
It was
Okay.
tough for me, having to go to soccer games or track, meets and all that stuff. But again, I was blessed to have my wife not work, until I retired her back in the late 90s. So just having that support always here at home was really important for me. And then I just have to make it work. I mean, that's it. You got to make sure that you have a calendar, you know what your child's doing, try to be there because one thing you can never get back is time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to make sure you support your family.
So as busy as you are, you got to make sure that you carve out that time for your
Absolutely.
family. And even if it means literally putting it on the schedule, you have to do it.
You have to put it on the schedule. Put it on the schedule, but you got to make sure that you spend quality time with your family. That's really important.
Looking back over your career, is there any mistakes or lessons learned or anything you would do over?
I still say that I would love to have been like a good friend of mine who's retired as a 4-star general, Mr. General Dennis Vi. He went into the military. And he'll never let me forget that. But Dennis and I were, high school, etc. And he said, man, if you went into the Air Force, you could have been top of the chart. I said, yeah, that's the one thing I still regret in a way. I like that military discipline, which is really good. But other than that, I've enjoyed my career.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned that Hampton University has a brand new president after 40,
Thank
45
God.
years.
Yes, thank God. Yes.
I cannot comment on that.
No, you're working. Okay.
I'm still there.
Absolutely. You'll be politically correct. Absolutely. He's a good guy. He was a good guy.
But you got a 3-star general. That's the current president. And
Yes.
then General Vi was there at the inauguration. 4-star general,
Yes.
General Vi from Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
With your business mind and your love for HBCUs, would you ever consider being a president of a university?
I mean, to be a successful president of an HBCU, one, you have to be politically astute, and
Which
then
you are.
yes, well, I try to be, and then you also have to be business savvy, which okay, but then it's a day-to-day of just dealing with, professors and all kinds. Oh no, all kinds of things that are going on. So for me, it would be a tough transition for me because I like being the freedom of being able to move around and not have to, be accountable for anybody at my age right now. Maybe back when I was in the 40s, but I just can't see myself being the president of a HBCU, or school in general. It's just too structured for me right now. But back in the day, 40s, early 50s, probably would have. Absolutely.
So Fayetteville State University gives you a call. You're not answering.
I deal with the current chancellor now. He's got me on speed dial. And so all his questions and things I try to answer to the best of my ability. But to have his job, no.
You like being the guy that tells, well, I tell him what to do, but advises him.
I just advise. I'm the guy behind the curtain. I don't want to be out there taking those bullets like he's taking right now. So no.
Gotcha.
No.
So my last question, and I'm so grateful for this interview, let's have this time to talk about your life journey. And like you said, you blazed a trail for me. You showed me what was possible. You showed me what I could be. And it wasn't just somebody I read about or heard about, somebody I could talk to and sit at the table with for hours until, halfway falling asleep, or just any questions, just like tonight I've had. You've always been an open book.
Absolutely.
And willing to teach and to be transparent and to be that mentor. And if I never told you before, I'm saying it tonight. I'm saying it to your face. I am indeed grateful to have you in my life, because my life is the better, the richer, successful because of someone like you that made a difference in my life. And I'm forever grateful to you for that.
Thank you.
Someone was to write a book about your life, what would be the title and the subtitle?
Before I answer that question, I just want you to also know, and I think I may have shared this with you before, but when I was in college and I wasn't able to get my tuition money, your grandfather, Curtis Johnson, actually paid for me for a semester of college. So
Really?
I don't know if you knew that or not, but he did
No,
that. Absolutely.
No.
He was, like I said, without him, I wouldn't be where I am today. Okay, I just want to let you know that. So he was a wonderful mentor to me, and he was somebody that I looked up to because he was the man, Curtis Johnson. Okay, he was the man. So,
and I appreciate it because he passed when I was 9.
Yes,
I missed his heyday of entrepreneurship. So stories like that, and I don't know them.
I know them all. We talked about all kind of stuff. Between him and Uncle Wilma Ever went to HBCU. All that stuff, they were just there for me all the time. So, yes. Now, to answer your question, the title of a book, is what you said? What did you say again? Title
it's all right. We write your autobiography. What's the name of it? What's the subtitle? What Maynard M. Smith, your biography or autobiography? What would be the title and what would be the subtitle?
I'm going to shamelessly say that, unfortunately, about 20 years ago, I read this book called The Art of the Deal by this dude named Donald Trump. It was a great book, but I like that title. And I would say not The Art of the Deal, but I would say it's probably The Art of Networking. I think that if I could write a book about me, it would be The Art of African-American Networking. Because in my business, you have to be able to network with everybody. I don't care if it's Asian American, Hispanic Americans, just all over the board. I have to be able to go into communities and network. So The Art of Networking would be the title of my book.
You need to write that for real.
I really do, because I've seen it all. I've seen it all. Absolutely.
Even if it doesn't become the biography, autobiography, just what you just said. Yeah, we need to talk. We need to
talk about that. We'll talk about that.
So once again, we're grateful to have Maynard Smith with us tonight. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast on Apple and Spotify. We invite you to subscribe on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Next week, we have the Maryland Woman Small Business Owner of the Year, Joy A. Johnson, will be with us next week to talk about her entrepreneurial journey, her book, as well as being a realtor. And we have other guests lined up for the remainder of the summer. Man, I'm going to turn it over to you to just say whatever to maybe some young man that's trying to figure things out, some father, some entrepreneur, maybe some teenager, your teenage self. What would you say to him that maybe, years from now, this YouTube is going to be out there for quite some time, and they stumble across this broadcast and they've heard your story, and I'm going to let you just talk to that young man and let you speak from the heart what you would want to say to them about what's possible both in life and in business. Thank you once again.
Absolutely. What would I say? I would say that in 2023, there are a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs. If you really do your homework and look at all the opportunities from the federal level to the state level to the local level, there are so many ways that you could really do great things with your career and just making sure that you can become the entrepreneur that you want to be. I can tell you from living in Maryland right now, there are so many contracts available, whether it's in construction or information technology or AI or just a host of things, but you just got to do your homework. In terms of my personal, I would tell any young man or young woman to just follow your heart. Just look at what you're doing in your life and just be all that you can be. And believe me, with God with you, you're going to be okay. I made it, and I'm still happy, and I'm still moving forward. So that's my story.
Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2022? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church laws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2022. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. If you're concerned about the future of your organization when you step down, then where will the mantle fall? A biblical and legal guide to succession planning is a must-read for you. It delves into the scriptural and legal aspect of succession planning, characteristics of successors, the people, the process, church bylaws, common myths, even issues with nepotism. Where will the mantle fall? Written by Richmond's own attorney, Pastor Travell Travis, and available at Amazon.com.